And this is the model that I'm implementing to ensure that we're going on this journey in a sustainable manner together. The question you need to ask yourself is, do I really need the funding? It's about demonstrating that this funding is going to, create growth, it's going to create returns. And that's the point of funding.
Hey everyone out there, if you haven't yet heard about it, Unconventional CA is launching a funding accelerator program in partnership with Nedbank. What is this all about? This is a unique opportunity for scale-up businesses or businesses in the growth phase who are looking for tailored funding opportunities to take their business to the next level. So, take advantage of this opportunity by applying in the link in the captions above, or otherwise spread this to entities who may be in need of such a unique intervention to help grow and scale their business. Thank you, and we'll see you there.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of our podcast series On the Couch with Unconventional CA. Today I have a very special guest who's going to speak around investment readiness for entrepreneurs. Her name is Cleola Kunene. She's the head of SMME development at JSE. Cleola, welcome and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Great. I know you've got a wealth of knowledge in the entrepreneurial development space. I've been following you for a few years and I see the extensive work that you do, not only in South Africa, but internationally. But even before us going into this whole investment readiness topic, which is a hot debate at the moment in our country, I just want to ask you some personal questions, just to break the ice with everything.
Okay.
And the first one is, what's your favorite way to relax and unwind on a very long day?
I'm a reader, avid reader. I've been since I was a kid, so I love reading. And I've got an extensive library of everything. And I also have recently delved into a new hobby, making furniture. So I'm reading all about that. And I also, for fun, studied astronomy.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
What about astronomy interests you?
I was interested in dark matter specifically and how little we actually know about it. So, yeah.
Any interesting insights that anyone could take away from it?
That majority of the universe is actually made up of dark matter. More than 90% is dark matter, but we actually don't know.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Wow, okay. And if you could travel back in time talking about the universe and dark matter and give younger self, some advice, what would it be?
I think the only advice I would give myself is to, stick to my convictions and just enjoy life as it comes at me.
Go with the flow with it, eh? So often we get entrenched into the future, we forget about the present.
Yeah.
Nice. I love that advice. So let's get into it from an investment readiness perspective. Many SMMEs often struggle with this whole investment readiness component. They're looking for funding and they're wanting that investor to come in, yet there often are hurdles that they are blindsided by. In your experience, having worked with SMMEs, especially around this investment readiness component, what would you say are the maybe 3 to 5 hurdles that you find SMMEs come across often, that SMMEs have blind spotted themselves on?
So I think maybe let me give a little bit of context first. I think when it comes to investment, or let's not call it investment readiness, rather funding readiness, in South Africa we are struggling quite a bit. If you think about it, we only have a success rate in terms of funding of about 37%. On average, and that includes whether it's DFI funding, banks, etc. And fundamentally, the reason for that is that the starting blocks of how businesses are structured. In South Africa, you can register a business. There aren't really a lot of guidelines in terms of the governance aspect of setting up a business, right? So the fundamentals, the basics are around you've registered the business. Perhaps you're tax registered, etc. But in terms of just the basics, the fundamentals of how we start businesses, how we run businesses, we are not necessarily educated in terms of the baseline, which is the governance aspect. And the governance is around what type of business do I have, what type of reporting is required, what type of tracking is required. the model of my business, right? How does this business make money, and how is it sustainable? So when you look at that as a baseline, when most people are looking for funding, they don't consider those aspects. So at the door, they immediately cannot access funding because the funder is going to ask you, okay, where are your financials? How is this business making money? How is it sustainable? And how are you going to ensure that if it is debt, that you're able to pay the money back? If it's equity, you know what I mean, that you actually can provide a return on investment. So it starts from the basics, and then going into even the, once you have your business up and running and everything is going well, your cash flow, your processes, your credibility, even as an entrepreneur. So there are so many factors, but as just a consequence of education in South Africa, we just don't necessarily have a baseline of well-structured businesses to begin with.
So if you look at the baseline part that you've mentioned when it comes to well-structured businesses, you also sit on investment committees for investors who are looking to deploy capital into the next up-and-coming startup or SMME. What are the common things that one would need to be mindful of as an entrepreneur or founder of a business that needs to cover that baseline?
So I think look at what funding is right for your business, right? So there are so many funding structures available, and a lot of people just the first thing they do is go to a bank, of course, or they go to a government entity, CIFA, NEF, etc. Most of them are looking for grant funding or trying to look at access to debt. But you need to look at what is the right funding for your business and for where you are in terms of your journey. If you, for instance, go to a VC that is tech focused, but you're in the health space, it's not a good fit. So I think look at what is right for your business in terms of what your needs are. Perhaps your need is just a short-term working capital that you require, and you don't actually need equity, right? In other instances, in fact, you don't even need funding. It's just that, you may not be managing your cash flow. But if you do need funding, say for instance, you're looking for debt, do you have, the means to actually service that debt? How are your financials? How is your cash flow? All of those things. So I think first and foremost, look at what funding fits for your needs and for your business. What is the right kind of funding, right, for where you are? If it is just for a purchase order, it is perfectly fine to just go for purchase order financing. You don't need to go and, look for a debt funding. Secondly, I think the question you need to ask yourself is, do I really need the funding? How much do I need? A lot of times when I engage with SMEs, they'll tell you, oh, I need 8 million. But when you actually look at it, they only need 3 million. And it actually, once they have the 3 million, they can deliver whatever they need to deliver and then can phase in the rest of the funding, or then they can kind of self-fund the rest. So what is the right financing or funding for your business? Engaging with the right funder in relation to what you need, understanding whether you actually can service that funding or provide a return on investment, and how much do you really need. If you're looking at equity and you say, okay, I want a certain amount in terms of equity, and say for instance you're asking too little, what's going to happen is eventually you're going to go back and say, I need more. That doesn't bode well for you, because you've gone through all that rigor to get that amount, but you weren't sure that was actually going to help you deliver what you need to deliver, right? So make sure that the amount that you get is the right amount. If it's too much, you're sitting with too much capital that you can't deploy within an effective period and to deliver what you need to deliver, right? If it is to access a specific market, you perhaps only need a certain amount, but say for instance you went for debt and you went for a high amount, you don't need all that funding. So you also disadvantage your business. And then consider also that the more money you need, the more rigor you're putting in scrutiny, you're putting your business under.
Sure.
So be sure that what you need, what you're asking for is what your business actually needs.
You summarize it in quite a few detailed points around getting a good, thorough understanding of your business requirements itself and what is actually required from a finance perspective, understanding the different investor types that are out there and what type of financing is required, and together with that, most importantly, actually getting to know your finances and the numbers itself, which many entrepreneurs, unfortunately, in this day and age, still seem to sweep under the carpet.
They do, and I think it's not just about audited financials, right? It's about understanding that who do you need to engage with to actually get your finances right for funding. Because this is a different type of conversation you're having now. You're not just saying, okay, my everything's up to date. You're actually now saying, okay, I'm in a position to be scrutinized. I'm in a position to make my case. And when you start with that end in mind, even consider, if I had to ask a lot of companies, they say, okay, I want equity. And I'll ask them, what is your exit strategy? They don't think about that, right? And they're expecting the financier to come with a solution. If you're going to someone and you're saying, I want you to invest in my business, you need to think of the end in mind.
Right.
How long do you want that money for, right? And if you're saying, okay, I want it for 5 years, it means you're anticipating by year 5 or year 7, you would have achieved your goals and that return on investment in order for you to have whatever exit strategy you have, right? Or you're saying, I want debt for this X amount of period. You're actually saying, I have the end in mind in terms of how I'm going to be able to close out this debt amount. So that the end in mind is such a critical aspect of that financial plan. We're not just talking about now, we're talking about the forecast, we're talking about the future. And you're looking at, what does this future for my business look like, my strategy, my finances, my growth.
You make a key point around the futuristic viewpoint that the entrepreneur has to look at with the exit strategy, and we were chatting off before we went on air about business models, and sometimes entrepreneurs don't really understand the real business model that encompasses. And from our experience, what we've seen is when they don't have that financial model in place around their projections as to what's going to happen in the next 5 to 7 years, there's the disparity there itself. When it comes to your experience from an investment readiness or funding readiness element, you mentioned the business model word offline.
Yes.
What's your views and experience in that regard when entrepreneurs are looking for the funding?
The UCA Hub is now live. So if you're an entrepreneur out there that's looking to grow your business, it's free to register. So have a look, follow us on our socials, and looking forward to helping you grow.
So I think, obviously there's different business models for each business, right? However, the key word around any business model, regardless of what your business model is, whether it's subscription-based, whether, is sustainability. Is this a sustainable business model, right? Say, for instance, your business model is reliant on projects. Every single time you have to pitch for a new project. Is that sustainable in terms of the funding that you need? Can you guarantee that you're going to get the next 3 projects? Or can you look at your business model and say, okay, there's some sustainability in terms of annuity that I'm building in, and then some that's pitch work, right? So you also need to consider your business model in relation to the funding that you're asking for. Because now you're bringing other people on board to say, I want you on board, because it's not just the money. The money comes with the entity, right?
Yes.
Whether it's the bank, whether it's the VC firm, etc. To say, I want to bring you on board, and this is the model that I'm implementing to ensure that we're going on this journey in a sustainable manner together.
You use a critical word around the business model has to be sustainable for that SMME's environment. And The other word he used was annuity revenue, which many SMMEs, in my experience, disregard. They will go on the project-by-project basis, and there's no recurring revenue to guarantee that from an investment perspective. What happens in the case where an entrepreneur actually works on a project-by-project basis, has no foresight of or understanding of what annuity revenue actually is? How do you mold them to actually think through that?
So I think, that's why there's so many development programs to help a lot of entrepreneurs. And South Africa is amazing in that regard, in that we have so many amazing incubator programs, and development organizations that support entrepreneurs to actually think through that. So I think it's not a one-size-fits-all.
Of course.
But I do think it starts with understanding your market opportunity, and your strategy. What is this going to look like in 1 year? What is this going to look like in 2 years? I was recently looking at a podcast at a video where the Capitec founder was speaking about their journey in terms of Capitec. And one of the things that he said is that it actually took them a year to develop their business plan.
Sure.
Right? And they looked at the market gap in terms of banking.
Right.
Obviously, they don't even see Capitec as a bank. They see Capitec as a solution, for market solution. But it took them a year to actually map out everything. And today they're still using that Capitec business model. That business plan is still relevant today as it was how many years ago. So taking the time to work through what the end in mind is going to look like, to work with development partners is so critical in terms of developing a sustainable business model.
So if I hear you correctly, if you're an SMME looking for that investment readiness component for your business, don't be shy to work with a development partner who can help capacitate you and give you the right advice and guidance so that your financial model and your business model is sustainable for investment.
Exactly. It's not just about getting access to funding. It's about demonstrating that this funding is going to, create growth. It's going to create returns. And that's the point of funding.
Lovely. I have two more questions for you. The first one is around the types of funding entrepreneurs may have available to them. You made a point earlier in the conversation that many SMMEs are just aware of the banks as financing and that, and not necessarily aware of what else can be available. If you had to identify the top 5-6 common funding mechanisms that SMMEs can utilize or leverage for growth, what would that be?
I think it depends on the stage of the business. In South Africa, there isn't a lot of seed funding available. However, there still is some seed funding. Obviously, angel investing is limited. However, angel investing is an option. Then we go into various type of ESD funding, grant funding, etc. Obviously, with even in terms of a lot of the government institutions, they do have a lot of different types of debt structures, right? Whether it's township economy funding, all of those types of things. But there are other interesting funding solutions, right? If you look at, for instance, we mentioned purchase order financing. There's also invoice financing. A lot of short-term structures that are available, right? Unsecured lending. There are some institutions today that provide unsecured lending. So if you need that unsecured lending, however, also understand that it may not necessarily all be the same. Some of the funding structures perhaps would look at, instead of you paying an interest amount, they would look at an amount based on the revenue that you earn or the profit earnings, right? So you could also structure it differently. Then going into ESG funding. There's a lot happening in that space, and we can have an entire topic around sustainability and ESG financing and impact financing, and the reporting and frameworks required to access that type of financing. But then also you've got VC, right? VC is an exciting space, and the VC space in South Africa is maturing quite well. In terms of VC financing, we've seen a lot happening, especially in the tech space. But there's also financing in VC in terms of IP commercialization, which we haven't seen, right? That's completely new in the South African landscape. And then we're seeing also different types of VC financing, whether it's debt VC, right? Convertible debt. I mean, those types of financing is just absolutely interesting for companies that are looking at alternative structures, right? You don't necessarily have to think that everything is just, I'm getting a loan, I pay back the loan, you know what I mean? There are different things that you can access that could suit your business. And then, of course, going into private equity, but it's very different. I mean, there we're looking at mature businesses that are profit making, etc. We have very limited private equity funding in South Africa, but it is available. And then, yeah, I think still same old friends, fools, and family, if you can access that. But yes, there's quite a lot of different financing options available in South Africa, and it's not just one thing. So I would encourage any SME, do your homework, see what's available, go to some of the websites, research what are some of the funding options available. There is quite a lot.
Lovely. That's quite a laundry list of finance options that you've given out. So if you're a viewer of this episode right now and you're not sure about the funding options, go and have a look on the internet. Alternatively, give us a reach at Unconventional CA and we'll gladly give you the different options that are available depending on which stage you are at in your business. Last question, Cleola. We've spoken about everything building up to funding. Now, often the SMMEs, in my experience, they just want the money, but they don't see the other elements that a funder can potentially bring to their business. What advice would you give them when looking at an investor who says, yes, I'm willing to give you the money? What other value can they extrapolate from it besides just the money part?
So I think what's really interesting is that most funders want to grow your business, right? They want to see your business succeed. And so even if you look at, for instance, NEF have got pre-funding work that they provide, support and services that they provide, then funding itself, and then post-investment, they actually have people that, sit on your board, work with your company to make sure that you're successful. It's no different if you go into a VC, and most VCs even have like financial services support. But remember, it's kind of like you're inviting a party into your business. So it's not the enemy, which most entrepreneurs are like, oh my gosh, I don't want anyone interfering. No, they're there to see you succeed. They're there to help your business. Why? It's in their best interest for your business to succeed. So even banks, for instance, have ESG support, etc. So tap into that support, use it, and use the advisory services that are there, the support services that are there, because their intention is really to make sure that your business is successful, and the guidance they give is to make sure that they can actually get their return on investment at the end of the day.
Lovely. Again, to all the viewers, don't undermine the importance of what else an investor can bring into your business besides just the money component. There are softer skills, there's a wealth of experience and network that your investors can bring in at the board table that can help strategically guide your business, to Cleola's point, to an exit strategy that is preeminent if you're looking for funding, especially from an equity perspective in terms of investment. Cleola, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. Closing question, just on your personal side of it. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I think the best piece of advice I've received was, I don't know. I've got lots of advice, but I think probably from my mother, it's just, wake up every day and be grateful that you're still here.
Awesome. I love it. So all the viewers, till next time, make sure you hit that follow button on all our social media pages, and we'll catch you on our next episode. Thank you. Thank you, Cleola.